We're privileged today to have Peter and Margi speak to us on the topic of Myanmar or Burma. It's only a little over 12 months, you know, since the military coup took place in what we call Burma or Myanmar. And it occupied everyone's attention for quite a while. Of course, that's been displaced by what's occurred in Ukraine. It's a shame in a way that has been the case, because the plight of Burma, the Burmese people in Myanmar, is really worth a lot of attention. It's a shame that it's faded from the news, but it's important that we do what we can to keep it prominent. Obviously, it's natural that the Ukraine would get our attention in the current circumstances, but hopefully we won't forget Burma, and particularly the Burmese people. Two people who have never forgotten them are Pete and Margi, our guests today, guest speakers today, and it's part of their effort to keep the plight of the people there in our attention. So with that, I hand over to Pete and Margi. Thank you.
Right. Right. You can use the mark thing on that anyway. You can use the... Ready to start?
Yeah, ready. Can you hear me if I speak like this? Yes. That'd be much easier. So, we're in two parts. One is talking about Myanmar, when up to the coup, and then at the end we'll talk about after the coup. And you'll see there's a guy roughly our age, 82-year-old, who's the hero on the other side, and we rang him last night and we took there's some notes about him. He was like us all. He had a cough, not COVID, he said, and he was down the local clinic and he had token number 12, and so he said, can you call me back in half an hour when I've gone through and seen the doctor? And then he went and saw the doctor, rang back, and he said he'd been to the doctor and they gave him 6 bits of medicine. And he said, I don't know why. Anyway, come back in the morning, so we'll ring him up. But he's, you'll see him there. Right. So, how we came to pay for 20 schools in Myanmar. That's one of the schools. And you see, this is up in the plateau. And this is the sort of place where the schools have been built there. And we stayed there in the village. And they're in the traditional dress. So Myanmar used to be called Burma. It's larger than France. Population's a bit less than France. Every day, Margi and I look up on our mobile phones. You know, you've got an app for the Australian and the Sun and the Age. Well, we've got one for the Irrawaddy, which is an independent one. Excuse me. It's an independent newspaper done by, it's on the border, and we're not quite sure who runs it, but it's definitely not on the side of the junta. It seems a bit neutral. And the headlines this morning, there's a village here, 10 villages got burnt yesterday when 100 soldiers went and burnt. The junta clash with troops in Arakan, which is across in the west. Malaysian foreign minister meets the underground government there. So every day we're up to date. Myanmar, it's a natural country. It's enclosed by mountains. And I always think of it as like a frying pan. And China, India, Bangladesh, Laos and Thailand are the neighbours. Here there's really hot plains. It's really, really hot. and the people, mostly rice farmers, and when the British controlled Burma, this produced huge amounts of rice. So they used to export huge amounts, and it's reversed, as happens. So these guys really toil in the heat. Then down the delta, it's a lot of monsoons down here, but again rice. Then up in the plateau, it's very fertile, and they get two crops a year, whereas only one crop here. And then you've got the high mountains, with Mount Everest over the top over here. The capital is Naypyidaw, the red dot. This is Rangoon or Yangon. The Rohingya that you hear all about across here on the border. And where we're talking about is up here on the edge of the plateau near Kalora. And that's where our 20 schools have been built. Okay, now the people, you've all heard about the ethnic people in Myanmar. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So the original people, I think they've all gone, like in so many places in the world, and they've had waves of immigrants coming in over the last 2,000 years. A lot from China, had the Mongols coming in, people from Thailand, and then in the 7th century the main force came down from Nepal, the Burma people, and they're the swift horsemen. And now two descendants of these people comprise 2/3 of the population. And Burma, that's where the word Burma came from. And then of course the British were there, and they brought a lot of people across from India. So the guy that, our hero there, is actually, what percentage?
It's only 25% Indian.
25% Indian, but he looks about 90%. And speaks that beautiful British English, you know. So ethnic groups, there's a map, there's 135 ethnic groups in Myanmar, and you can see around the mountains there's lots of different ethnic groups. The main Burma and in the plains, and so these are all the ethnic groups, and the ones with the dots are ones where we've stayed overnight and paid for a school to be built. The people that are not included are our friend. He's a Burmese Indian, and of course you know about the Rohingya, and also the Burmese Chinese don't qualify either. So we've done 7 trips over Myanmar. And Chris said he just did one recently, which sounded absolutely fascinating, and you've talked about that, haven't you?
Mm.
Yeah. So 2005, 2019, we took 4 of our grandkids and 2 of our 2 daughters. We've never done a tour, and we just travel with this backpack. That's all we ever take. We never have shoes, we just have sandals on the plane. But we have clean clothes every day. First thing we do in our hotel is, or accommodation, is wash our clothes. So that's, and we rarely see other Western tourists. You'd be the same, wouldn't you? Be no tourists there?
No.
Yeah. Too scared. I'd be. So, this is, pictures. Margi in the train, in the boat, on the back of a motorcycle, walking lots. So we just wander, we use local transport, rarely see other tourists, eat and walk like the locals, and find accommodation when we arrive somewhere. So this is our first trip there in 2005, and before we went, do you go there or don't you go there, and all the ethical thing about, because the military run there. And we went there, and in retrospect, the people said, please come back again and stay at small places. Don't come back and stay on a tour or in a big hotels, because that's all owned by the military. So we stopped in, wandering around, we stopped in this place, Kalor, up on the plateau. We met this guy. He was a teacher of English, which helped us, the beautiful British English. And when he retired, inflation destroyed his income. And how much did he get a week?
I think it was only 30 cents a day or something.
30 cents a day, his pension had sort of deteriorated, so he had to go back guiding. And just by chance, we happened to go with him. Anyway, we walked. He took us out, and we walked through the fields, and we ate with the stayed on farmers' places, and we walked out with him and walked everywhere. Slept on the floor. Hope this was all clean. And then ate with the farmer. There's the farmer, Margi, Omien, on the floor. Talked. Well, we don't speak any Burmese. It's just so hard to learn, and very few people speak English. So it's usually translators. And we wash out on the balcony. Just fantastic. And then we went back again in 2007, and we took family and friends, and we happened to bump into him again, 2007, the second trip. And while we were talking with him, this idea came up of us paying for a school. And it was triggered by someone else in Sydney who'd done it. So we said, oh, we can do the same. So we spent about a year sending the first lot of money there, because we didn't know this guy really. We don't know whether to trust him or not, but send a little bit of money and see what happens. And at that time, the Australian government had an embargo on Myanmar, and Myanmar wouldn't let money from Australia come in. So we had to get people who'd send it from one person to another, all illegally, and it ended up in this guy's bank account. And then we communicated by email, didn't we? A little bit. Yeah. And the school was built, and we went across there for our third trip in 2009 and visited the school. And this is what before and after, typically. And we hid from the military. When we were there, they had a bit of a celebration in the village, for us and our family being there. And they're all getting ready for us to go down to the school when they said, hey, hide. The military are about to come and have a meeting there. They weren't worried about us being captured. It was more that if the military found out we paid for it, they might burn it down. And so from 2009, when we did the first school, we had, can you trust this guy or not? Is he embezzling? That sort of thing. Anyway, we overcame those problems. So from 2009, Omien and ourselves have built 2 schools per year. And we visited roughly every 2 years. And we sometimes have a ceremony, and we hand over the official title deeds of the school to the education department, and we have nothing else to do with it. They run it, provide the schools. So this is a village you saw the little video clip of before, Pilone village, about 250 people, 50 houses. It's got from kindergarten, they call it, it's lovely, it's got all this Burmese talk, and then they all talk about KG, which means kindergarten. It's the only word we know in Burmese. And they've got 2 teachers, this guy and another. And before we used to talk a bit about Facebook before the coup, but these guys are too scared to go on Facebook now. Yeah, that's it. So this is This is Omian, you know now. He's 82 years old. So he selects each village. He's designed the building over the years and it's got better and better and better. He manages the construction and it's all voluntary. He goes and sleeps on, he arranges contractors to come and build it, or he might get bricklayers to do this part and painters to do this and carpenters to do that. And he sleeps on site with his son helps, and he communicates by occasional email and telephone to us. And 2 years ago, just before the coup, he got like an order of Myanmar for the voluntary work that that he did doing these schools. We didn't rate a mention, as always. So over the last few years, we've got to trust him, and we know he's got very little income, so we send him a few $1,000s every 3-6 months just to survive. And we also have been paying for his trips to Yangon. He has to go down to a good clinic down there because he had a heart problem for a while and he's got asthma. And he told us sort of on the quiet one time, if he hadn't have gone down there for one of those checkups and get the medication, and the medication, some of you can relate to this, we're out having coffee in the middle of nowhere and he got his pills out, and as a joke he said, "These are all the pills I've got to take." Put your hand up if you can relate to that. Anyway, just a cultural thing. In Myanmar and lots of Asia, I found this, people don't say thank you. They don't, you know, we in the West, we use thank you all the time, don't we? We overuse it, thank you, thank you, thank you. Almost becomes meaningless. I don't think anyone's ever thanked us for the schools. And they don't do it by saying thank you, they do it by interacting and relating to you. It's lovely. And another thing too is the names. I reckon they've got 100 names. They don't have family names. You just get 2 or 3 names. And I reckon they've got a pool of 100 names, haven't they? That's pulled out of the hat. Which mixture you get? So you can't relate anyone to their kids or their family. It's really... It's very hard to remember their names because they're all so similar. The evil man who runs the country now has got this in his name, and he's got this guy's son's name in his names too. So this is how it works. We're Margi and Peter. We're from overseas. A lot of them don't even know where we come from. Australia. Oh, you're from Germany? They don't know our, because they don't use family names, they don't know us as Margi and Peter Card, they just know us as Margi and Peter, their system. So each school's cost us, you know, today's terms about $30,000, and it's from our own savings. Like Chris, I was in the mining industry, which was very kind to me, and Margi was a teacher. There's no charity, there's no NGO involved, so we don't get any tax deductions, and we send our cash via a guy across in Werribee who happens to be he immigrated from Myanmar and he knows Omian. So we just send it to his bank account, and then 24 hours later we get a email from Omian saying, "Oh, the money's arrived." Good. So he's become a bit famous now, and so he's got lots of villagers who their schools are really just bamboo shelters, and so they ask him to come and visit and look at their place, and he then interacts with the education department. This is before the coup.
It was in between the military running the case and when it was Aung San Suu Kyi was the Prime Minister.
Yeah, that's right. So during Aung San Suu Kyi's time, things started going well. She never had, the government, the military still had power over the whole country all the time. In recent times, they've never relinquished control. So this is he interacts with the politician, we know this guy, and the education department, and then he says, hey, Margi and Peter, we've got this village, you know, how about do you think we should use that, build the next one there? And we say, oh yeah, whatever you say, we'll go along. And so here's just some photos to give you a feel for the places, the villages that we're involved in, we stayed in, and where the schools have been built. So just to remind you, it's up here on the edge of the Sham Plateau. So they have good fertile soil. They manage to get 2 crops a year. Usually the people up there grow rice for themselves, and then they grow vegetables or garlic, turmeric, flowers, and it's a cash crop. So it's just the most beautiful country. So, and we're in the whole region, we'd be the only non-tourists in the whole place. There's no tractors, no cars there yet. It's like, it's magic. And we just wander through there. People help each other. So when, like if you group there were in one village, you'd all go and help one person 2 days, and then he'd put lunch and dinner on. That's all you do. Next 3 days later, you go to the next guy, and he put lunch and dinner on, and you all volunteer. And we were told that really that's still only, it used to happen over the whole lot of Myanmar. Now it's just up in the plateau, where the West hasn't yet infiltrated. Just like here, the grandparents look after the kids. And
those are heavy, aren't they?
Oh, this is really, really heavy. I don't know how they do it. They often have a little kitchenette outside where they do the cooking. We know this Buddhist monk very well. He's just going through things on probably Facebook with us. This is the most remote and
poorest too.
The poorest and most remote. It's not really remote, you know. It's just
hard to get to. You know,
yeah, it takes us days to get. Take a day to get there, but it's yeah, fantastic people there. We spent a couple of nights there, and we had to bathe behind one of those buildings, didn't we? People come and look at us, having a wash, you know, complete nutty wash. Again, all the mums get out and help each other plant garlic. So they might do this, what ladies feel this time, that one's the next day, that sort of thing, and all voluntary.
Kids just sleep.
The baby. Very fertile, see all veggies, irrigation system with pumps. They've probably got solar pumps nowadays. Yeah, most families have a motorcycle. Essential water tank, and then the women, the young girls, carry these buckets. What do they weigh? Like about 60 kilos, don't they? These little girls carrying every day they go and bring all the water down. And so we stay in the village homes. We stayed in that one. There's our washing of the line. I think that's Margi there. We sleep upstairs. Downstairs, they bring the animals in at night. And we sit on the floor. This is how you eat: rice, veggies, and often they bring special chicken from us, which is just bones, isn't it?
But they do have good roast peanuts.
Yeah, roast peanuts. Yeah, we almost say, please don't make it special for us. We can't eat the bones. And then we sit down. Obviously, I've taken a photo. Tea always in all the place. Tissues. And then this is only it. He'll sit there, and the villagers just walk in and out all the time. No one, and when you meet someone, no one says, "Oh, hi," and shakes your hand. And Only often doesn't know people's names. You just recognise them. It's just a completely different way of life. Very, very trusting. Everyone knows each other, but what's his name? Oh, I don't know. I have to ask. And he'll sit there, and the villagers say they sit there and they just tell stories and laugh and carry on, don't they? It's sort of like a bit of an idyllic. I'm sure it's a bit of wife bashing goes on too. But and then we sleep sleep in the main room under the Buddha's shrine on the floor. Sometimes they give us a little mattress, and then every day we have a full body wash, and you can see the people up there are quite amused. So we wander anywhere, anytime. It's just this wonderful old-fashioned village feeling, open, safe, content and trusting before the coup. And then here I am having a go at harvesting the rice. Really, really hard, heavy work.
I think we'd go hungry.
Yeah. And then typically in these villages, every adult would have a smartphone. They use solar panels to charge the LED lights at night and mobile phones. Yeah, every family's got a motorcycle, scooter. They use mobile phones all the time. They use a lot of Facebook for business and for friends. They used to have satellites, but now it would be dangerous to have a satellite because the military think that you're getting information from outside the country, and so you're likely to end up bashed or have your house burnt down. Yeah, and then 2 years ago we took our kids there, our grandkids and our own 2 daughters, and they said they had the best holiday ever. And you know, they ate in the monastery there, slept on the floor, did the harvesting, climbed up pagoda. That's fine, you can do that. And the difference between a church here and a monastery there is, a monastery is just part of living. It's like a community hall. And if you go for a walk, you know, if you're going for a walk between villages, you might rest there and talk and charge your battery for your mobile phone, that sort of thing. And then the grandkids went to the schools and did activities. This is that. Remember that shark? What's that song about? Baby shark, mother shark. Remember that was all the rage. They're doing it, and they're saying goodbye to owning it there. All having a go at. And this is inside one of the, that's our granddaughter. Then outside you'll see a bit of the view of the typical countryside. So we stayed in the houses up there. Oh, they have these, occasionally they have those Chinese donkeys, they call them, or something. You know, the putt-putt diesels. This year, up in that very remote village, they had the heaviest hailstorms ever, and they used zinc rather than steel for the roof. So we got, Omi sent us a photo of this, and we said, okay.
The school wasn't very old, was it? That roof wasn't very old. Yeah,
that was a new roof. And then the villagers, the same thing, destroyed their thatched ones. And so and their zinc ones. So we sent $3,000 to redo the school roof, and another $3,000 to do a small number of people who are, you know, single mums whose roofs had been destroyed. Right, Myanmar today. So this is our interpretation. This is not from outside. We didn't get the information, so it's got our bias in it. We might be wrong. So, as you know, just over a year ago, Aung San Suu's government was overthrown, and now it seems to be the military junta versus most citizens. Not all, most. So the military junta, they seem to control most of the country today. The military junta in simple terms, it's the mega rich generals and their families taking back control of the country so they can run everything as a big business, that they own everything. And to help them do that, they've got 500,000 soldiers and Air Force to enforce things. And so these guys are busy getting very, very rich, and these guys, some of them are plundering, murdering, beating, raping, torture, burning mortar. A bit like a mini Ukraine. So the military junta, 500,000 people, and everywhere you go, there's these white walls about this high of like the old concrete block, and then they've got barbed wire above, and they'd be what, a hectare at least, a few hectare, and it's a military base. This is the leader. He's the new emperor of Myanmar. He's a bit like a Putin. He's really, really ruthless, greedy and powerful, and a lot of nepotism amongst these guys. The revenue from the army, they used to get a huge 17% of the budget, but their main income is from big businesses that they own. And they've got two giant corporations, that the army and the generals, and it's all opaque ownership, but so they own the businesses that dominate mining, manufacturing, banking, real estate, tourism, transport, telecommunications, alcohol, cigarettes, petrol, diesel, airlines and buses. So here in Australia they own Qantas and Woolworths and Coles and the Commonwealth Bank and the, right, it's just everything. Up there in this lovely hilltop mini city of Kalor, there's Margi. We're just going for a wander quite safely. There's a military building, and these are the holiday homes of the generals. Used to be British, or some of them used to be British. So the military junta is supported by a few ethnic armies. Remember, there's little ethnic groups all around here. Some of them are on the side of the military for selfish reasons. These ones would be aligned with the Chinese. I think this is a war. And they fight to support the military. And these ones, like all the rest, they're often into mining, logging, drugs. That's where they get their income. And we're getting the impression that there's 4 major supporters outside. This is our interpretation. We've got China is the biggest supporter, you're probably aware of, but also Russia has been supplying arms. But then India, which surprises me, seems to be supporting the junta too, and definitely Cambodia, because you know Hun Sen, the head of Cambodia, and we went there in January, just backpack round. His family's the same as the military junta there. He's doing the same thing, so he said join the club. So it seems to be the junta versus most citizens, and there seem to be 3 different resistances. First of all, these people defence forces. Secondly, the civil disobedience movement. And thirdly, you've got the National Unity Government in hiding. So the first one is the People Defence Forces. So in the highlands, you've got those ethnic groups that have been there forever, and they've have long established militia, and lots of these have been fighting every government here, including Aung San Suu Kyi's government, to have independence. But you know, the central government always wants everyone to be in one federation or whatever, whereas these people want to be independent. So now these people are on side with the National Unity Government. So they're regularly every day, these guys are fighting the military. And in the cities and farmlands, you're getting spontaneous citizen groups arising. So the mini armies up in ethnic ones, they're well disciplined because they've been selling drugs for years and years and years and logging and all that sort of jade. So they've got income and they've got taxes, and so they're organised armies and they're fighting actively against the junta. But down in the towns and the plains, they're not organised, and they're like amateurs, and they started off using bows and arrows and ancient old self-loading guns. But between them, they've killed many thousands of soldiers. The second group is the civil disobedience movement, and that's over the whole of Myanmar. And what they do, CDM, and that's their symbol. Government employees go on strike. And I must add, all this is very brave, because if the junta knows that you've been on strike, it'll come around and possibly torture you, put you in jail for 3 months, 10 years, whatever. So these people are really brave to go on strike. But then they've had days and they said, okay, 21st of May, we'll have a complete shutdown of all the big cities, and nothing happens. The whole place stops. There's no one on the streets. Employees just stop manning the buses and planes and trains. Trucks cease deliveries. And this is one of the most widespread, is the citizens no longer buy all the products, the alcohol owned by the military. They boycott them. And Aung San Suu Kyi is their figurehead. Whatever you think of her, she has brought all the people together against the junta. And the third one is the National Unity Government in hiding, and it's somewhere here, which is where this Irrawaddy newspaper is produced. And what it is, in brief, you've got the members of parliament from Aung San Suu Kyi's party that haven't been seized and put in jail and tortured. They've gone into hiding, and they've combined with leaders of a lot of those ethnic groups to form united National Unity Government, reverse of gun. And before, those ethnic groups are fighting Aung San Suu Kyi's central government. Now they're all together. So this is obviously the way of the future for them. If they ever get rid of military, and we don't know if they will, this will bring about the new Myanmar. So today, these are all the components. Military, some of the People Defence Forces fight, helping the military. Most of them opposed. And then you've got these hotspots all over the place. So today there's someone burnt here, someone assassinated there, some junta troops killed there. And then I went last night, I went to the newspaper, and these are the headlines from last night. Nuang Shui. Have anyone been to Inlay Lake here? Right. You know, that's the town of Aung Shui. So you've got 15 junta soldiers killed by the Karen Defence Force. So that's just over here. So again, up there, 300 houses burnt down by 60 junta forces. Kachin, over the right. At the top, sorry, it said the Kachin People's Defence Force up there, the little militia, said hey, any of you guys that work for the government, if you keep going there, it's on your own head. Chin, across the border on the west there, they ambushed, there were 70 vehicles snaking through a canyon there, and they ambushed the junta's convoy, including 2 tanks. Indian border, the junta has forced 30,000 people across the border into India, and they're getting no support from India because India seems to be on the side of the junta. This village, 8 villagers were tied up, executed, and they often burn the bodies. Kaya, across there on the right centre. This is all yesterday's newspaper. 65 junta soldiers killed in intense fighting. And also what was in yesterday, Malaysia has snubbed the junta and sent their foreign minister to meet the foreign minister of the shadow government in Hong Kong, which is fantastic. And then the biggest news really, this is like last week, President Biden welcomed Southeast Asian nations, you know, ASEAN went across there, but they wouldn't let the junta be represented there, and they had an empty seat sitting there as a token, their symbol of ignoring the junta. That's it.
Take questions.
If they speak up so you can hear.
Are you prepared to take questions?
Oh yeah, so
Any questions? Yes, Paul.
Yes, I was interested in the fact that they've got telephones, modern telephones that they can use, and I was wondering how they manage with the NBN over there.
They're just internal really too. They're cheap Chinese ones for start. They're not like our smartphones.
Right.
They don't have all that.
But they still
can
get towers.
communicate within them. Yeah.
Yeah.
but they still, like we rang up Omni last night, and he just answers the phone. I could ring him now, you know. And good question. Why do they keep it all open?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's also, I can't answer. It's all puzzle for us, but they do go into Facebook because that teacher, instead of doing stuff that was more personal, he now puts up crap about, you know, some rock concert or something like that that's completely non-controversial. Yeah. But they do communicate, and as I said, nearly everyone's got a smartphone. They cost $25 or something, and they're almost as good as ours.
Yes.
Do you know what caused the junta to give up power on the previous occasion? Was it sort of just unrest within the...
This is like 2016.
Yeah.
Well, they were sort of forced into having an election, but then they had the Constitution of 2008, I think it is. They still had 25% of the seats, and the Emperor decided who those 25 would be, and you couldn't make any change to the Constitution unless you got more than 75. So they blocked it. And also the military junta, even though they had only 25% of the seats in Parliament, they had control over most of the economy, foreign relations, the army. So really Aung San Suu Kyi had very limited control. But we noticed huge improvements in the roads and buildings and hospitals over the time we've been going, haven't we? It's just enormous. A lot of it's the horrible Chinese money coming through. You know, like you go anywhere in Africa now, it's the Chinese money, Solomon Islands. Yeah.
I don't know, I get confused about this, with this Aung San Suu Kyi, who's in prison and seemingly there forever.
Yes.
Is she a naughty person, or is this all trumped up stuff?
Yeah, good question. When we first started going there, she was in the background, and the message we got from the the local people was she's a very good figurehead, speaks really well, and this is going back like 10 years ago, and that she's hot-headed. You don't think that, do you? You know, she's this sort of thing, and she's really hopeless as an administrator. You give her any work to do, and it doesn't. And so we got these really negative vibes. And then she got awarded the International Peace Prize. What was that?
Nobel
Peace Prize.
Yeah, Nobel. And the locals said, this is after they said to us, you gave her that, we didn't. Right? And so then she was the figurehead of the party that got into power, and she was the sort of prime minister in de facto, even though she wasn't allowed to be called that. And then what's happened is it's flipped over. Now she's the hero inside, and she is definitely the uniting force. And it doesn't matter whether she's hot-headed or whether she's hopeless administrator. She is that force that's bringing them all together against the junta. And at the same time we've flipped and we said, oh no, she's evil, right? Because she got involved in Rohingya. And with the Rohingya, she was between a rock and a hard place. She couldn't win. The army are the main force against the Rohingya, and if she spoke up against that, then the army would have seized control earlier. So it was, you know, she could never win. But to Margi and I don't know how it...
Well, I think her father was, of course, the main, you know...
Aung San.
He was excellent, and then she came as a very good spokesperson, but as actually a worker, she doesn't seem to be so, but she has the support of the people, and I think the Western world has gone against it because of the Rohingya, where we hear that was the army doing it all, and the army was dressing up as anybody other than the army, so that they could go and burn the houses, and then the press would come and take a photo and say, oh, this is what's happened because of Aung San Suu Kyi. So it's hard to make a judgment even talking to people, because we're only talking to a limited number of people anyway. So
that's right. And with the Rohingya, we get a really very narrow view of that. They were brought in by the British, and a lot of them flooded there in more recent times. And I can say this to you people, because you wouldn't be offended, but I'd say 98% of the people of Myanmar, whatever ethnic group in, don't want the Rohingya there, because it's not because they're Muslims, because there's Muslims all over the place, and they get on. They're not.
Yeah. Well, they're allowed to have their religion.
It's a bit like Australia, you know. We all get on. Whereas the way they live is very different to what the local people do. The local people generally in the cities, they'd have 2 kids. In the country, they'd have 3 or 4.
Maybe 3. I don't think.
Whereas the Rohingya would have,
8,
12, 8, right? So, and also the Buddhists. Well, I can't say. The people of Myanmar who happen to be Buddhists are very clean in their daily habits, and they don't see the Rohingya as the same, right or wrong. So it's like a lot of stuff. It's not, I don't know, I might be simplifying, but it's not just racism, it's more different lifestyles, and different values.
They're taking over the area from the Burmese villages because their population's increasing so much, they just keep spreading out further, which is pushing away the Burmese people out of their villages. So they're starting feeling, well, how can you keep pushing and becoming bigger, and we don't really accept you anyway. So I think that was where a lot of the tension was.
Can you imagine me saying that to kids only under 30?
Yeah, that's right.
You've been very generous, obviously, giving your own money, as the way you've described today. Have you ever thought of crowdfunding and trying to increase the amount that you've got available?
Well, if someone wants to do that, we're happy for them to do. Yeah, but we've actually got another school. The foundations have been laid out, but Omian said, I'm a bit too scared to go there at the moment. Let's wait to see how things go. And
We don't want it to be a business.
3 months ago we
Yeah.
said, oh, I'll be all over in 6 months. Don't think so.
And we don't want it to be a charity either, because that brings in a whole lot of other things.
Yeah.
This we might have finished, you know, and then we'll just disappear out of the
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. We we go there and we get zero recognition for what we've done, and we don't want it anyway. But it's just a different way of living.
Yeah.
It's good. It's very free, relaxed, open, honest. Yeah, it's good.
Jeff?
We're totally happy.
Jeff?
I had the impression before the junta that Myanmar was very strong in general terms to maintain Buddhism there. And so I was just wondering, these ethnic groups that are fighting the junta now, the individual ethnic groups, are most of those non-Buddhist or Buddhist?
I would have thought they're Buddhist, but I couldn't be
pretty
quoted
sure,
on it.
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, very. I guess they're
What we've read.
90% Buddhist.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's definitely other Buddhism around.
Kevin, first to Kevin, he's had his hand up. No, Ellen, just a minute. No, Ellen,
English
Ellen, just a
language.
moment.
Sorry, wrong.
Sorry, no, I had already given the nod to Kevin. You next after that, if you wouldn't mind.
Sorry.
Kevin.
Well, that's a wonderful story, what you're doing. It brings to mind the similar story from Afghanistan. Was it Mortensen, I think, the American
Built the schools, yes.
basketballer? He wrote a couple of books, Three
Yeah.
Cups of Tea, Stones into Schools. They were doing it on a big scale in the end. They did get sort of a charity sort of behind them, and I just wondered if you're familiar with that and how that's ended up.
I'm actually more familiar because I've read the books, but other than that, but we've not been prepared to make it a big thing. It's just something that we like to do, and we didn't want to become administrators of anything. We prefer to visit and do the things, and our man couldn't cope with. He personally couldn't cope. It would become a big thing if we started bringing in it as a big thing. And the other thing is that when Aung San Suu Kyi's party were in power, or not in power, but had more control, they were starting to build a lot of schools. So where there weren't schools being built, and that's where we felt there was a big need, they started building more schools and providing teachers. Before one class would 100, we would provide teachers for, even if we didn't provide the building, we'd provide funding for a teacher's salary, just because, number one, they only got paid for 11 months of the year, because if they're not working for that last 1 month, you don't get paid. And we just pay for a teacher, so at least for 100 kids you get 2 teachers, because it's massive.
And last night, Omian said that schools go back 1st of January, 1st of June, and he's always got a big interest in our grandkids who go to local Aspinall schools. And he said the number of teachers were doing the CDM, civil disobedience movement, and not teaching. And he said they're all being replaced by people who will.
But their teachers really are. Students have gone through university, and what standard university you could question where it is at, because I know a few years ago when somebody went across and looked at the tertiary education there, and it was a fairly low sort of level for teachers anyway. They just do any subjects they like, and then they go out and become teachers. They don't do anything to do with education. It's just go out there. They teach English. They've got no idea what, they can't understand anything we say, even if we speak slowly and clearly. So the type of education too, we haven't got involved with that either, because I think that's not our prerogative. We've got enough here to worry about.
2 more, and then you, Alan, to finish.
Do we have any strong relationships, the Australian government, with Myanmar? And do we provide any technology, like remote area power sources where there's no electricity, and we need devices to do that? I mean, you're doing a great cost. What is our government doing?
Yeah, I prefer not to answer that question because it's outside our expertise. We've got sort of a bit of a
Does
contact.
anybody know here?
I know the one thing, we happened to, through circumstances, talk with James Patterson, you know him, Senator,
Yeah.
and he's head of the Intelligence and Security Group, and just got a minute of his time, and we said about Myanmar, you know, you're sanctioning some other place in the world. Which one was it? I forget exactly the country. Why don't you do the same with Myanmar? And he said, yeah, we've got them in the sights. But that was like 3 months ago, and I happened to see him later and said, oh, you know, what's happening? Yeah, it's still in the way, but nothing's happened.
Well, have they got a good electricity system out in the places where you...
Electricity?
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
It's coming,
Other
it's certainly
schools got
coming.
electricity.
some of them have and some don't.
Most of them hadn't got electricity. Most of them haven't, but are getting it, really, is
But-
what we're getting it.
Yeah, and there was big rollout of electricity all through the country, and they had this program before the coup. But then Omi last night said they get electricity broken 8 hours a day, no water. They have to buy water. If it's raining, it's good because they use the rainwater from the roof. And he said it's really hot.
But what,
You know, like it's in the 40s now.
what we
but
provided with each school was a solar pack, so that, and we did the satellite, and we also provided them with a television and uniforms for the kids, and so the television actually provided the village with information from overseas, and they could get things they could.
World
Not now.
Health Organisation are not coming into that country as well.
Sorry?
World Health Organisation.
Yeah, you do certainly
there-
come across places, and you would have seen this too, in places where you've got water being supplied to the village, and you've got some, maybe the United States have done it, or some Christian group from somewhere, or somebody else has done it. So they are certainly getting overseas help, but Australia, I've got no idea to what extent.
Thank you. Alan, finalise that. I'll hand over the floor.
I'll just speak. I hope you can hear me. About 3 years ago, Peter and Margi gave a talk at the Lyceum Club on Syria. And my wife was there, Marjorie, and she said to me, you've got to get them to talk to Probus. And so we did. We got them to talk about Syria. And I thought that was really interesting because they go and they travel lightly and they talk to everybody and they form a view, their own view. And we've seen them on their Burma trip. How many trips? 7?
7. Yeah.
7 trips to Burma. It's not there's no Ritz-Carlton here. You blokes should be struggling. It's the villages. It's the talking to the people. Now, I went to Burma just before COVID, came down from India. Now, we stayed in guest houses. We didn't stay in the villages on the floor, I can tell you that. But it was extremely interesting. But they get a view of the country that most people would never get. And when you see commitment to helping a country, 7 trips, funding schools, you're really seeing it here today. Now, Simon Appel, in your travel group, forget it. Just get your bag, pack it, get on the train at Aspendale,
As we do.
and as they do, and go to Tullamarine and off they go, light. Take the drip-free clothes and wash it overnight. This is the way to travel. I'd like to thank you both very much, and we've got this small token. That's for you,
Thank you
Margi,
very much.
and Peter,
Thank you.
that's for you.
Is that from Myanmar?
No, it's not. I think you'll join me with a clap for what I think was a really interesting presentation.